hopefully it's going.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the thing.
It says setting up your meeting for Facebook Live. So
there we are. We are live on Facebook. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening,
Rich, Greg, how you guys doing?
Good, man. Good. Happy to be here. It's a nice. We have a nice show set up. Appreciate the guests. Somebody else towards the end as well. I'm very excited to have this conversation. Rich, David, how are you? David, why don't you introduce the guest and we can jump in. It's a very exciting show we have planned.
Absolutely. Well said, Greg. Yeah, you guys, it is my pleasure. I'm really happy to introduce a special guest tonight, filmmaker Stephanie Ayanian. She has Bay Area roots, which she could share in just a second, but she is filmmaker of the documentary What Will Become of Us that will be airing on KQED, which is a public broadcast station here in the Bay Area next Tuesday, March 9, and she can share more about that as well. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us tonight, especially staying up late for us out there. She's out there in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining us tonight, Stephanie. Welcome to the show on Arach Media tonight. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on Arach Media, Rich, Greg, and David. I appreciate being here, and it's not every day that I get to have an interview at midnight my time, so it's kind of exciting.
Well, we're really grateful you took the time to do it. I think a lot of us have been looking forward to either seeing this or seeing it again. We're really fascinated by all the work that you put into it. And, obviously, most Armenians, we want to watch Armenian-related content. So just even having the opportunity to talk to you is really at least a personal thrill for me. So thanks for being here.
I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be here with my Bay Area family that I left in 2003. And I wish I could come back and visit right now in person instead of having to do an interview via Facebook. But I'm happy to be here via Facebook as well.
But those days are definitely coming. And once everything's opened up, we will host you in person. We will do more and more screening of this film. I saw it. I really, really liked it, and I really encourage everybody else to watch it. But what we can do is we can dive in with a 30-second trailer as a way to kind of showcase to those watching us what it's all about and get a little whet the appetite.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know. Where would you guys like to start?
At the trailer.
Yeah, let's start with the trailer.
About that, I will cue it up right now. Forgive me.
No problem. So, yeah, while that's coming up, Stephanie, where can everyone see this film next week here in the Bay Area? Well,
thank you. So KQED PBS is going to be broadcasting my film, What Will Become of Us, along with an Armenian double feature. So it's going to be my film with 100 Years from Home, which is a wonderful story about Lili Pilikian going back to Western Armenia to look for her ancestral home 100 years after genocide. So our films are going to start at 7 o'clock on KQED. 100 Years at Home at 7, my film at 8:30. So plan to stay tuned from 7 until 10 for this Armenian double feature pledge event.
Awesome.
I'd always cast a long shadow.
Our place at the table of nations. In 1915, that place was nearly stolen from us.
With Armenians, we do have this heaviness.
I feel a responsibility to share that story in a way that doesn't feel as traumatic.
This is a new era for us.
Very cool.
Obviously, it's amazing. I mean, and I don't want to kind of reveal anything. I've seen it. I'm going to watch it again and again and again. But let's start from the title, right? What will become of us? What was the kind of like the idea behind this documentary? If you can shed some light on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2014, I was actually sitting in my living room with my husband talking about, wow, next year on April 24th, it's going to be the 100th anniversary of the genocide. And I thought, I hope someone is doing something to commemorate that. And I didn't know what was being planned by filmmakers and media makers across the world. And so the next day I started calling different organizations to see what films were being made. And there were a couple of films kind of starring at the time that really focused on the genocide. And I thought, it's been a really long time since something's been on PBS. And I really like PBS because it gets into most American living rooms. Most American homes have access to PBS either through cable or through broadcast, and also now streaming. So I thought this was a really good opportunity to educate the public about Armenians. And I thought, what should we be doing about that? So I talked to my non-Armenian filmmaking partners, and I also talked to some Armenian scholars. And the concept was pretty early on, do something that's forward looking. Don't just talk about the genocide. Every film pretty much that had been made was really focused on the genocide. So we launched a Kickstarter campaign in late 2014 for a project called A New Armenia. And it actually did really well. And that gave us the seed funding to start really researching, developing, and filming what is now What Will Become of Us. The reason we changed the name to What Will Become of Us is because, and this was actually after it was edited, was because I was a little concerned that the regular PBS audience, the non-Armenian PBS audience, might not tune in to something called A New Armenia. I wanted a name that was a little bit more intriguing. And so I worked with our editor, Greg Feinberg, my co-director, Joe Myers, and our writer, Mary McDermott, to come up with names. And we landed on What Will Become of Us because, to me, at the beginning of the film, it's a question. And to me, at the end of the film, it's a statement. So I feel really strongly about that's why we named it that. I don't know how my collaborators would feel. I don't know if that's how they would answer or not. But it really, we try to take a look at what being Armenian in America means 100 years after genocide, and how we have many people who are contributing to American and Armenian identity and culture today.
Right. Yeah, no, as I'm listening to you speak about this, I recall my own childhood and how my father struggled really, really hard to assimilate into American culture. He loved American culture. He loved Elvis. He loved Cadillacs. He loved America. And he wanted to be part of the American dream. And he wanted me to be part of that American dream. And in doing so, he alienated me from some of my Armenian roots. Now my mother was Anglo. My mother was born in Brooklyn and grew up in Philadelphia, and then ended up here. But my struggle to be Armenian enough has led me to go really hard into the paint, into being as Armenian as I can, because as much as I love America, it's hard growing up with an IAN at the end of your name, and the first day in school going, yeah, that's me, and no one knows how to pronounce it. So it's like, well, I might as well just explore that instead of go away from it,
Absolutely. And this is something that I really questioned a lot in my youth as well. And I still question it. I'm in my mid-40s now, and it's still something that is a topic of thought for me. And that's one of the things that I, really kind of appreciate that we put into the film, is this idea of identity. Growing up in the Bay Area, my family was connected to the Armenian community there. But our real thick ties were to the Fresno community, because that's where my parents were born and raised. Right. So we were often in Fresno on the weekends, and that meant that we were going to church there sometimes. We had a church in the South Bay, but we weren't going as often. And so, I was very much in an American school and not surrounded by Armenians all the time. And when we moved away from the Bay Area, we ended up in literally the middle of Pennsylvania, where there was one or two other Armenian families within hundreds of miles. Right. And so people looked at me and they knew I was different, but they didn't know how I was different. And they saw my last name and no one could pronounce it. And so, I used to say, you couldn't know me for 5 minutes without knowing that I was Armenian, right? But believe it or not, actually being in San Francisco, when I was there in my, I guess I was in my early to mid 20s, my father helped connect me with AGBU, and I was part of the Young Professionals group. And that's where I started to kind of, as you did, Rich, kind of dive into this Armenianness, right? What it meant to be Armenian. And fortunately with that group, it meant having fun and going a lot of places on ski trips. And I got to go to Armenia with for the Pan-Armenian Games with them. But still, you know, I really was interested in this concept of culture and identity and what it means to be Armenian. And I don't speak Armenian. And because I don't speak Armenian, I am judged all the time.
100%.
Right?
My usual chop is that my father, while being an exceptional man, taught me just enough Armenian to get me into trouble, but not enough to get me out.
Hey,
Absolutely.
That's usually the way it is. I know numbers and I know some words that I probably shouldn't say out loud. You know,
like for the first time, I feel like I'm in the minority here.
You are on this call, Greg. Yeah, no,
I speak it, but you know, I don't. There is a, you know, I'm actually, there's this new app called Clubhouse. I'll take the long way route, and there's a lot of conversations on like what does it mean to be Armenian, and there's a lot of different subgroups now. Obviously, with Armenians popping up, there's the Barskahais, there's the Beirutis and all that, and all of these conversations are kind of popping up on that. And I was like, wow, this film really ties into all of it. What does it mean to be Armenian in the US? I really don't want to dive deep into what exactly I saw in the really encourage everybody that's on right now, please tune in and watch. Stephanie, I wanted to touch on something you mentioned previously about PBS and the affiliate stations, how important it is. I know David and I and Rich as well, we did a lot of promoting for the Promise, right? And how important that was for the Hollywood industry to see that Armenian films can do well. You'd mentioned before we started talking just now about what it means for Armenians and just people in general to support the stations that are playing those Armenian programs. Can you dive a little deeper on that?
Absolutely. Thank you. So, you know, the way that PBS works in this circumstance is that each individual station across the country gets to decide if and when they screen our film, right? And we want the station programmers and PBS in general to hear our voices and to understand that Armenian stories matter. We want them to play Armenian films, right? And so it's been a while since there's been a film nationally distributed by PBS. And we want to send those programmers at KQED and every station across the country the message, play Armenian films in the future. So the way to do that is during our broadcasts on Tuesday night, call your station, you know, go online, support them, and make sure you tell them that you're supporting them because of the Armenian films, right? And one way of doing that is by pledging during their program and pledging for the program. So there are going to be gifts that are offered. So if the gifts look good to you, get one of the gifts, right? But definitely consider becoming a member of your station during the broadcast times to send them that message that Armenian stories matter, and for the non-Armenian, you know, public, that immigrant stories matter and that independent filmmaker stories matter. That's also important.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to be clear, make sure that they know that we're supporting the stations because of the Armenian program.
Absolutely. And if you call in during that time and you get one of the thank you gifts, they'll understand that that's why. If you actually end up contacting them outside of that time, let them know that's the reason. Many stations have a way that you can give and get thank you gifts outside of the broadcast time. So, you know, find a way to let them know that these films brought you there and that you're becoming a member because of these films, and you want them, you know, to consider Armenian programming in the future.
Yeah, well said, Stephanie, and thank you for bringing this to everyone's attention, because, you know, look, everyone's been so focused on giving to Armenia, giving to Artsakh, helping humanitarian aid there, but then this is an important aspect of us being in this country and making sure our voice is heard, right? Especially in more households, like you said. So, just quick question logistically about how to donate. Can that also be done online? Is it by phone, online? And I guess what's going to be the best way for people to donate during the show, during the broadcast?
That's a great question. Yeah, so typically each station has their own way set up. I know for a fact they'll have a call-in option. They'll have a website option. Some stations have a text option now. So I'm positive, though, that they are going to give you all of the options. There's usually 3 or 4 options, and they will spend a lot of time telling you about them. For each program that plays, they spend, I believe, 30 minutes talking about how you can support your station while they pause our film. So the first pledge break might be 5 minutes. The second one might be 10 minutes. The third pledge break might even be 15 minutes. So you're going to have a lot of time to figure out how to pledge based on how KQED would like to be supported.
Okay, very good.
So one of the things about PBS that I find, amazing, for all of us who, listen to, NPR or any of the public broadcasting at all, or watch PBS, whenever they have the pledge drives, occasionally it's like, oh my gosh, again. But we have to remember, they're not corporate funded. And when they are, it's usually an endowment. And so, it's really supported by the people. So it's really important to support this kind of programming in this way, or else the programming itself can get contorted, as well as for advertising dollars. So I would encourage everybody to support PBS.
Absolutely. A couple things. First, Stephanie, thank you for the HBO Young Professional plug. Greg right here, and myself. Greg's the past co-chair of the group, past co-chair of HBU Focus, past chair of Winter Gala, and myself, I happen to be the current chair of YP Northern California. So it's really awesome that you're involved. And by the way, a friend of yours, one of the founding members of YPHC, Kim Bardakian, says hello live on the thread. We also have
Kim.
Yeah, so there you go. Hopefully she hears you. She's saying good morning, Steph, because it's obviously early your time. We also have a couple donors, so thank you to Carol and to Jacob for donations for the Armenian Wounded Heroes Fund, which we're raising money for tonight. And that leads me to a question for you, actually, Stephanie. So the film, and again, not to give away too much, but the film obviously follows 6 diasporan Armenians, right? And their involvement in various fields, some more prominent than others, which is really cool. And actually, if we have time, I want to ask you how you got all those people lined up, but we'll come back to that if there's time. But the film focuses on them around the centennial of the genocide, right? The Armenian genocide. Yet I think all of us here agree that the film is more important and more relevant today than ever, after what we've seen in Artsakh and the threat to Armenia to this day right now. So what could you share with everybody about how this film's message still resonates with audiences today, or how it resonates with them, with you, and what we can still learn from the film today, even though the genocide has been recognized in Congress and now after this war in Artsakh. And I realize I just stacked all the questions, but just share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I will. I'll take a stab at this, and then I would also love to hear your thoughts on it, because you guys have seen the film. So, when I made the film, and I was actually asking people to support us as documentarians and donate to making the film, one of the things I said is that people still don't know who we are as Armenians. Mm-hmm. They don't know us. They don't know who we are. They don't know where we're from, and therefore, how could they support us? That's right? And so this was an argument I was making when I was fundraising for the film. And my hope is that people across the country, and now in Canada also, are getting an opportunity to learn about us and to appreciate our ancient culture, our history, and also what's going on today. So that, people who started seeing the film a year ago, when it premiered in Detroit and across a couple other cities, my hope is that they saw the film and understood what Armenia was and what it could be, so that when the war in Artsakh broke out in the fall, that perhaps they supported us in some way. I felt like during the war in Artsakh, I felt like we were screaming for help and no one was hearing us, and it was tragic. And as that was happening, I questioned why it was happening, and I have lots of opinions about that, but we don't need to go into that. But I hope that films like ours can continue to raise awareness about who we are as Armenians, our place in history, and our place in the world today. And so that's one of the reasons we made the film,
Absolutely. Well,
I'm so glad to hear you articulate that. And I couldn't agree more. I think And Greg and David know this from us being in orbit together for more than a decade. Many of us, I know I can speak for myself in this, I've spent the better part of 5 or 6 years working steadfastly with the LGBT community, because we need allies, and I can't expect anybody to care about us unless I show how much I care about others. And so it's really important to live your values and live your truth and to show up for other people, because we share commonalities that they can understand. And when the time comes, it's not that I expect it, but I hope that the investments that I've made in the people that I love will be reciprocated, because that's to me, that's part of fundamentally living a quality of life. And so I think that's really important to articulate that. I think, and I appreciate that.
And I echo what Richard said. And to answer some of your questions, well, again, without revealing what the film is about, I saw it. I loved it. Correct me if I'm wrong. The first time around, it was airing around the time of it was summertime, or it was around that time that it was here. And when I watched it, here is what I took away from it. A little bit on the negative side, because I'm experiencing it here in the Bay Area. And it kind of resonates with the name, What Will Become of Us. A lot of the parishes here that I see, I'm actually a relative newcomer. Rich and David are much more, rooted in the Sacramento and Bay Area. I came here in the year 2000, so newcomer relatively. And what I'm noticing as I'm going through these parishes, right, there's a lot of photos of the founding members, and I'm looking at the last names of the founding members. And I don't always see their grandkids here, you know what I mean? Like, so, and that is actually a thread in your film. It's, I believe there's like one part is when you showcase Fresno, something there. I won't reveal what, but it's, like after a while, you start to understand is like, hey, where are we going as the American Armenian, Canadian Armenian, whatever, the Armenians in the diaspora, and how that ties in for me with what just happened. And, this is going to be a little, sad and hopeful, is there really is just that one, we are at home here, we're American Armenians, but the one safety net, the one place where our culture will always continue forever and ever is over there in Armenia, because that is the production, you know what I mean? That's where we are. I don't know if the film was intended to answer that question in that way, but again, oftentimes I go through the church halls and I'm like, wow, full of names that I've never seen before. And you know what I mean? Like, and you wonder where are those grandkids and great grandkids. So that's my takeaway.
Yeah, no, that's actually in the film. That's what character John Simonian, human being John Simonian, calls the dropout rate.
Yeah.
And so, that's an interesting it's an interesting thing to consider, in your own communities and really all across the world, right? And one of the things that I hope we think about is the litmus test of what it means to be Armenian, and perhaps opening that up to allow people to feel comfortable coming back to the churches and coming back to the community.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, I mean, of course, I echo Rich and Greg's sentiment. To me, being someone that has gotten very involved in the Armenian community, particularly in the Bay Area, the entire film really resonated with me, in that it is dealing with one of the core issues that we face, which is, how do people identify? But before that, how are we going to continue to sustain our communities when people are dropping out, or when we're not able to keep or have as many people involved as there could be, right? Or as there should be, you could argue as there should be. And then I kept thinking the entire time, I actually watched it very recently, and the entire time I'm thinking at it, looking at it from the perspective of, wait a minute, this is all still so valid and important right now, despite Congress. Yes, Congress recognized the genocide, but the president hasn't. And yes, the war happened, and that this doesn't deal with that, but we still have to figure out how we're going to navigate the threats to our own society, not just in the diaspora, but our own society in Armenia and Artsakh. There's continual threat. How do we preserve that ongoing? And so like that's what resonated with me from the film. And I think it's so important. I'm grateful that you made it and that it's going to be on PBS a second time now. People can watch. So
it's such a good multifaceted film. It touches upon many angles. I have a couple of technical questions. Like, what was the production time from inception to the finished product?
Greg's the cinematographer in the group. If you didn't,
I
cool.
photography back in the day.
I'm voiceover artists and actors. Okay.
There you go.
I'm the musician and still shot guy.
So I'm just curious. Yeah. What how long did it take? And also besides the PBS, what is your other release options? Because we want Armenians to be able to view it not just on PBS, even though we are actually drilling this down when it is on PBS. Everybody right now, we will share the heck out of this film, and we need to make sure that Armenian films resonate with the and are supported by these entities. But anyways,
Yeah, so I conceived of the idea, the very, the kernel of it was April 24th, 2014. We launched the Kickstarter for it in October of 2014 and very quickly started getting survivor testimonies because we didn't know what would end up in the film. And we were concerned that the survivors were, of course, 100 years and older, passing away. And I spent 3 years fundraising for the film. I was hoping to fundraise in 6 months to a year. It was a very hard time to fundraise in the Armenian community because everyone was giving to the Centennial, billboards and newspaper ads and things like that, which were also important causes. But so it took me 3 years to fundraise. And during that time, whenever we'd get money, we'd continue filming. And so ultimately, we finished the film, believe it or not, 2 years ago. I think we finished the film 2 years ago. And then we started to seek a distribution partner. And we knew we wanted it on PBS. From the moment I conceived of the film, I knew I wanted it on PBS. But there are multiple ways to distribute on PBS. So we were trying to find the best distribution partner for the film. That took a year. And then our RAID 5 hard drive crashed. So we couldn't deliver to our distributor as quickly as we had hoped. So we were delayed by a month. But so ultimately, it started in 2014 and it released on PBS the first time a year ago in March. And so it's been quite a journey. But I'm so thrilled that it's going to be in everyone's homes next week in the Bay Area.
Oh, so brilliant.
Second time, right?
The second time, yeah. So it'll be the second time for What Will Become of Us, and it'll be the first time for 100 Years from Home.
But that, from what I know, that is not your film. That's just
that is not my film. Sorry, yeah. So 100 Years from Home is a film made by Jared White and Lilit Pilikian. And that film will begin before my film on KQED on Tuesday night.
We will support both of them.
How did the double feature come about, Stephanie? How did the double feature come about?
Yeah, so SoCal PBS, a big station in Los Angeles, had heard from Jared White and Lilit Pilikian about their film 100 Years from Home, and they knew about our film also. And so they actually conceived of the Armenian double feature. And during that time, they asked if they could introduce the filmmakers to each other. So I met Jared and Lilit, and it was so wildly successful in LA. They broadcast it, I think, over 5 times as a double feature. And it was just such a big hit that Jared and Lilit and I talked about, okay, well, let's join forces and try to get this out to more cities across the country because it certainly sounds more appealing. So we've actually done the double feature. I'm going to forget all the places. We've definitely done it in Detroit. We've done it in Philadelphia. Where else? Obviously, Southern California. Now it's going to be in San Francisco. On the same day it's going to be in San Francisco, it's also going to be in Buffalo and Toronto. So we're just trying to hit all the Armenian big epicenter cities. And it's supposed to be in Chicago in the next few months. And Fresno's probably going to play it again. Yeah, we have a lot of places that are on our list that are just yet to schedule. So
Stephanie, let us know whenever it's in other markets as well. We'll do our best to reach out in any of the, we're all connected. So
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Stephanie, listen, thank you so much for joining us tonight, for staying up late out there in Philly. We're so grateful to have you, and thank you for sharing about the film and just how important it is for us to continue to support our local PBS stations. And we hope to be able to continue to have more Armenian content on our local stations. And we hope that you have a wonderful evening. I did have that one question that I'm really curious how you lined up all those guests for your.
Do you have a minute? Can I keep going?
Absolutely, yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. So believe it or not, we did it like through the Armenian network, right?
Nice.
So I called AGBU, I called ANCA, I called Armenian Assembly, I called all the organizations across the country. I called lots of churches. I read Armenian newspapers. I looked at social media, and I tried to figure out who were some good story ideas. If I had a story idea in my head, I would literally plant the seed in people's minds and say, who fits that? Who might work? And it wasn't just my head, it was my, filmmaking team's head. So ultimately it was through people helping us make connections, right? So I might talk to like Arach Vartanyan through, his connections to the Armenian community in New York. And also, he's a genius with hyperallergic, but I think he's the one who told me about Lori Tatulian, the comedian.
Nice.
So it was often kind of like, oh, do you know about so-and-so's cousin's cousin in this place? And then we connected. And I will also say that my director of photography, who's also my co-director, Joseph Myers, every single place we went for the many years that we were filming, anytime I thought I was meeting someone for the first time, he would always laugh. Yeah, you're probably related to them. And we would always only have 1 degree of separation.
Wow.
The world is this big.
The world is really that big. So yeah, and so that's how we found people. And we ultimately interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people, and we had so many stories. And in fact, we filmed 10 stories.
Wow.
And so we have some of the film is actually on the cutting room floor, not because it wasn't good enough, but because we had a 90-minute film edited and PBS told us they wanted an hour. So in fact, if you visit whatwillbecomeofus.com, you'll find out about our next project that we're launching called No Difference Between Us, that uses footage that we shot for What Will Become of Us to create our next film. So when we talk about, the next stories and the next Armenian stories, we actually have one that's been shot and we're about to start writing and editing, and we're fundraising for it. So if you want to learn about that project, you can go to What Will Become of Us and learn about the current film that's on PBS. And there's actually a link at the top that will take you to No Difference Between Us if you're interested in learning about the next film we're working on.
That's awesome. I actually already have the link up on the thread for this particular broadcast. So at least I'll have access to it, and we will continue this. By the way, these we're very grateful for all the viewers that we have, all the people that donate, and we're also grateful that this gets some traction after we go live. So the history of it extends. So that's a good thing. The thing I wanted to make mention of is I think it's a really amazing, and it takes a particular skill and talent to take a story as arching as as ours collectively, and then truncate it down to 60 minutes. Like, how do you do that? I mean, even 90 minutes is like, how are you supposed to do this in 90 minutes, let alone 60?
Yeah, so, and also try shrinking, 5,000 years of history down to a few minutes. So it's
right. It's like we're perpetually in the elevator pitch mode.
Yeah, yes.
Absolutely. Well, I believe you guys have another guest that you're having. So number one, I just want to thank you at Arach Media for having me, and Rich and Greg and David. So thank you so much for including me and including What Will Become of Us in the topic of conversation today.
Thank you for joining us. We will continue plugging the URL, the date of the movie, and I want to make sure and encourage everybody to watch it. I've watched it. It's a phenomenal film. I really, my hats off to you. It was well done. Touched me, made me start thinking about a lot of things. And I encourage everybody to watch this. It's a great piece.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. Have a wonderful night. Tuesday, March 9th, starting at 7 p.m. Armenian double feature on KQED here in San Francisco Bay Area.
All right. Take care, guys.
Nice.
Sleep well when you do.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow,
Awesome.
that was
amazing.
amazing.
Hey,
All right, so can we level set for a second? That was fantastic. That was probably my favorite interview to date. And I'm really grateful that she has put so much work into it and is so charming and articulate and fantastic. So
Well
we
said.
also, she's right, we do have another guest coming up in just a little while. So before that, David, would you like to tell us who that guest is and what they're here to do before we get into the news briefly?
Yes, it'll be Valina Agbabian. She's the Northern California District Chair for the Armenian Assembly of America. She's going to come on for a really quick overview of the Armenian Assembly's first ever virtual advocacy conference and virtual fly-in advocacy week, where people like you and I and all of us here can actually meet with your member of Congress online, virtually, to discuss issues and items that are of importance to us as the Armenian community. So that show should be on later tonight, towards the end of our episode, as we go into the action items to talk more about that conference that's coming up next week. So yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so and she's going to come on at about 9:50, which is about 10 minutes prior to our end. So we have about 14 minutes to go through a tremendous amount of news. So I don't know how much
the news has been worse before, but yes, it's a lot.
Yeah, but you know, there's some big things to talk about, and I think obviously the biggest thing, the big elephant in the room is of course the political situation in Armenia, which you know, for lack of a better word, trumps everything else that we need to talk about. I think, at least as far as I'm concerned. But obviously we have a remembrance to talk about. We've got a few other things to mention. Where do you want to start?
Let's get right. Greg, why don't you touch? Thank you, Rich, for setting the scene for us. We do have a lot to cover. Why don't we start with the item of the remembrance of Sumgait? Greg, if you can give some context on how it is directly connected to what's happening now in Artsakh. That happened. This commemoration was last week, February 27 through 29. 33 years ago, we commemorate very tragic pogroms that happened, right, Greg? If you could share with everybody about.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, you know, what's happening in Armenia is troublesome. It was nice to have Stephanie here talking about a movie that deals predominantly, as I come into the diaspora, deals with the folks like yourself, David, you and Rich, that are from the Western Armenia. This is Sumgait, is essentially the massacre that took place, the pogrom that took place still in Soviet Union. You have to understand, this is still Soviet Union. Mikhail Gorbachev is around, and essentially this was an atrocious attempt at annihilating Armenians from Azerbaijan Soviet Socialist Republic as a response to the ushering in of the Artsakh movement, which essentially gave birth to Armenia in general. Okay, so this is, and you can throw questions at me. I want to be as concise as possible.
The Artsakh movement being what at that time? If you could share with everybody.
The movement was the idea, right? It was the idea of, hey, the Artsakh, the Nagorno-Karabakh autonomous region, right? Through dozens and dozens of years of discriminatory actions, we're looking at what happened to the Armenians of Nakhichevan, and I always drill that home. I always talk about Nakhichevan because we seem to have forgotten. And right now we're dealing with all the fallout from the war. We seem to be forgetting slightly about, you know, there's a whole Western Armenia that was also lost. We need to walk and chew gum at the same time. So what happened was the Nagorno-Karabakh autonomous region was the Artsakhs were noticing in a few years we're going to be just as assimilated or pushed out the Nakhichevansis are, right? And under the thawing of the Gorbachev Soviet reform system, they essentially there was a movement that sprung about saying, hey, this is an autonomous region. We can petition. We can start asking Moscow to remove them from Azerbaijan and put them under the Yerevan's control. And as a result of that, there was an orchestrated, and here's why it's very important. The very first, most egregious pogrom was 33 years ago in 1988. Sumgait is a factory city outside of Baku, essentially. So it's Yeah, it's a factory city outside of Baku, predominantly with a large population of Armenians, because who were Armenians in Azerbaijan? They were the skilled class in all aspects. They were like the teachers, the engineers, you know what I mean? And this is a huge factory town built during Soviet Union times. It's not an ancient town. And overnight, what happened was this crowd comes onto the main Republic Square over there, and systematically starts going through the Armenian parts of the living areas. One thing that's emerging currently, committing atrocities, essentially saying Armenians out, Armenians out.
Much like we saw in Lyon and other places.
Absolutely, yeah. This is
same thing, which is why that triggered response in most of us comes up, because we know about it, we've seen it before.
Absolutely. You saw that in that famous scene in the movie The Promise in Istanbul during the Armenian genocide. Then this is what was happening in Sumgait. Then it repeated in Kirovabad, which is and other parts of big major cities in Azeri Soviet Socialist Republic. Again, it's important to underline that this is still under Soviet Union, which is kind of crazy, right? You can't put that under Soviet Union, but here you got all layers of the local government being kind of lockstep in trying to massacre Armenians, which is why it's so egregious and how scary that was. So 33 years on, here we are again today. Same exact things, same exact tactics, same exact gaslighting, lying to us that, oh no, this didn't happen. People talk about certain aspects of the actual war of independence in Artsakh. We're talking about, 33 years ago. But we really need to start driving this home. The pogroms that happened were well organized, orchestrated, and this was not just some kind of a ethnic clash.
Right. It was 100 were killed, including women, children, and elderly, and thousands of Armenians were forcibly displaced.
So we know. I apologize. We know a guest that would always come on our show. We know a lot of friends from the Bay Area community, and actually Rich Sacramento as well. There's neighborhoods now of Armenians from the Azeri. Yeah.
My father is instrumental in bringing dozens and dozens of Armenian families here. Like my father worked tirelessly to get people to a place of safety, right? And also, let's put this in context. Spitak had happened just prior to this. So we're talking, and for those of you who don't know what Spitak is about, there's a massive earthquake that we just celebrated. Well, celebrated, I guess, is maybe the wrong word. But we recognized that, and that happened just within months of this event. So you have a population who has been devastated by an earthquake, who is now being devastated by their neighbors, essentially, right?
And this ties into today, obviously, because it's an ongoing issue, and the world hasn't learned anything. So, anyways, we can do an entire show as David
for sure.
You mentioned about this, but we want to make sure that every Armenian knows what Sumgait was,
exactly
what happened there, and what continued happening, because there's a difference between Sumgait and Baku. There's a few years of difference. Okay, so it's troubling. We must commemorate.
Yeah, that's and we just did, right, last week, 33 years commemoration of those pogroms, and we have to keep fighting today against the oppression we're facing from Azerbaijan and Turkey. So
right,
yeah.
Okay, so we have a few other news items before we get into the political situation. There's the, you know what, I'm just here, I'm just going to do this, and then we can talk through each of these briefly. How's that?
Yeah, let's rattle through them. If you guys go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
We've got the search for the dead and the missing in Karabakh. Finally, the Azeris are going to let that resume, it looks like.
Yes, they have. And that was, again, this was the longest period of time that, and for no real apparent reason, that they had blocked or stopped or withheld the search I don't know if it's called rescue, but the search for the lost and dead and fallen soldiers had been held and on hiatus for the longest period of time for no apparent reason. In the past, it was weather related or it was skirmish related or something, but finally it appears that has resumed.
Well, that's good.
Okay,
the next one is, the Burbank City Council is recognizing Artsakh. So
amazing. Thank you, Burbank. We're going to.
I mean, we need as many municipalities and then, of course, states to begin recognizing this, because what we're trying to do is build, not just international consensus, but we need to build momentum. So
exactly, yeah. So this was on Tuesday of this week, I believe. They unanimously recognized Artsakh as independent republic, while at the same time rescinded the Burbank Hadrut Friendship City status. And you guys probably know why, hopefully, right? Hadrut is now in occupied Azerbaijan. And so that's a good thing that they rescinded that. And they said why. They said it's under the illegal Azerbaijani occupation.
Okay. And then so now we also have the European Commission deplores Azerbaijani attacks on Shushi and the Ghazan Chesoz Cathedral. I don't want to dwell too much. A lot of these entities are now coming up in voicing concern for a lot of things Armenian related, but I'll see the support when I actually see actual movement. Right now,
I think it's great to have this recognition, but I would rather have, I'd rather be arms akimbo, in prevention rather than
exactly.
Condemnation after the fact doesn't help.
As we are pressed for time, this next bit I want to just quickly do a little context. Thank you. Yeah. So Iran said to return the missing Armenian plane. I will backpedal a little bit here. So this is a crazy story that emerged around the time when there was an issue between the Armenian military, the 40 generals that wrote a letter asking for Pashinyan to step down because of the Iskander missile crisis. We've covered that already, right? This issue was when a plane that was slated to go to Armenia suddenly made an emergency landing or disappeared in Iran. The fact that the Pashinyan administration and civil aviation is under his control, so I don't care if a minister there screwed up, it's on his watch. He was able to, within 24 hours, piss off Russia and the United States all at the same time.
That's
the level of incompetence is really, really starting to be of some masterful level, unless this is all planned, man. You know what I mean? Which leads to the final conundrum that we're in right now before we bring on our last guest. It is the political stalemate that we have right now here in Armenia. There is, on the one hand, an incompetent prime minister and his cabinet. And I don't need to defend myself as to why I keep calling him that. The list of mistakes is there. David, you yourself said, I don't know when there has been the last time someone lost something as big as a war and hasn't, continued staying in power. That's number one. Number two, there is also now, as much as we want the opposition to mount their political, slogans, they are also a little bit incompetent, and it's time for us to start kind of mentioning that, because you have such an egregious, horrible scenario that the country is currently in, and you are unable to you are unable to unite the nation behind you and push in a front, and thus keep the man around and continue with this horrendous stalemate as we are in right now. I'm optimistic. I hope that we have a resolution soon. There has been talks of snap elections. There has been talks of Pashinyan meeting with the opposition movement leaders. I am hopeful because at this point, hope is all we got, man. Sorry.
Well, funny, and I'm gonna just show off some of the, if my computer will let me, some of the articles that we have up here. But I think it's interesting when you talk about it being a stalemate. It is in some ways, but I correct me if I'm wrong. a stalemate means nothing's happening. But the problem is that there are things happening and they're not good.
Yeah, they're not good.
Right. So Manukyan, the anti-position movement, or the one of the heads of the Homeland Salvation Movement, which is obviously pushing to for Pashinyan to be removed or to resign. He's being investigated on charges that on February 12 and 20, he publicly called for violence and forcibly overthrowing the constitutional order. He's saying though this is politically motivated, which I would not doubt, right? But
absolutely, yeah. because obviously everything now. Look, man, you have a guy that lost us the war, okay, and now he's a finger pointing at anything and everything except for the most important thing. That, hey, man, you need to, even if you know what I mean, even if you leave and what do you call it? Appoint a deputy that's still from your party. You gotta go, dude.
Exactly.
And he just doesn't want to go. Yeah. So if he's gonna smear this guy and call him a criminal, mastermind, all this and that, it's just part of the game. And unfortunately, I was today on a Zoom conference call. Was on a Zoom conference call about an Armenian diasporan that's currently in Stepanakert, and the conversation wasn't exactly pretty. Okay, so. Right. The longer the conversation is about Pashinyan leaving, right. The less we have time to actually speak about what is going on in Artsakh and how we can move forward.
Right. Greg, as you touched on Vazgen Manukyan, oh no, we already talked about that. There was no agreement on elections between Pashinyan and opposition leader, the leader of the Bright Armenia Party, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, Edmund Marukyan met with Pashinyan. In short, no agreement on snap elections, as you mentioned, Greg. And then the last real item, I think, is the whole thing of the Armenian army chief is still in limbo. The president will not accept, Sarkisian will not accept Pashinyan's petition or letter to have this chief of the army resign or to fire him. He's not accepting it. So it's stuck in this limbo right now. The president's refusing to sign the decree, saying that it appears unconstitutional and would deepen the unprecedented political crisis in the country, as you just said, Greg. So there you go.
I just want to kind of, stand. Thank you, David. I want to stand on my little what do you call it? Pedestal and say the following: the people that I've heard in recent years praise Pashinyan was President Erdogan of Ankara, President Aliyev of Baku, and recently the leader of the Grey Wolves movement, the racist group against Armenians, praising. He says, "Yeah, I like Pashinyan and he should stick around." So wonder why. Do the thinking. What do you think is the move forward? So to all the Armenians that are still, hey, Pashinyan, blah 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 blah, Kocharan and everybody else is horrible. Like I am on these clubhouse rooms that I talk about. I go, guys, we're talking about something very weird here. We're talking about the luxury of having an option, and in reality, what we really are facing is either having this guy get pushed out and some salvageable scenario, or possibly losing Sunik and maybe the beginning of the loss of Armenia. Okay, so and now we can talk about democracy, Kocharan, Ser Sarkisian, and all these other things, which, by the way, they do have a lot of fault of their own as well. A lot. But we are like, the house is burning right now, guys. Anyways, I don't want to take up any more of this.
The really only other news item is, it's unfortunate, we're still in a pandemic. Armenia, the positivity rate of COVID testing has jumped back up to 16% positivity as of Monday, Tuesday of this week. So there needs to be, they're calling for more use of masks and distancing, but there does not appear to be any of that happening over there, unfortunately. So that's concerning. It's very concerning. Yeah.
I mean, we have I hate to say it this way, but we have the luxury, over here of being able to decide whether we want to have a mask or not, decide whether Applebee's should open up or something like that. But, right. Over there, they've got, they have huge issues they're dealing with. And not to say that this isn't a big one, but I think that, if if your house is on fire, the last thing that you're thinking about doing is changing out the laundry. You know what I'm saying? Like you gotta deal with bigger issues, and this is a big issue. But I just don't think they have the kind of luxuries that we have, and I hate to call it a luxury, but I can't imagine that they're prioritizing it. That's what I'm saying.
You're Rich. You're dead on, man. Like we were talking about that during the war too, right? Like the last thing they're worried about is getting COVID. The last thing they're worried about is where their mask is, because there's so many other things going on. And you know, who knows? Maybe some of the rise is because of all the protests happening, all these large assemblies of people. I'm just speculating, but who knows? It's just something that is being voiced by the government now. So yeah.
All right.
Well, we are about ready to let in our other guest and talk about advocacy.
Real quick, guys. There's a couple things under action items. Whoever is watching right now, or you're going to be watching, the ANCA West Region. So West Region has launched a new district ambassador program. If you have the link handy, Rich, great. If not, don't worry about it. This is focused on all Western states, primarily outside of California. So this is really for you guys to share with any friends, family, colleagues, Armenian and non-Armenian. See, there's the list, perfect map right there. You can see that are in any of those states that might be interested in signing on to become a district ambassador, to really help grow and make sure the voice of the Armenian voice is heard in Congress in all Western states, not just California. So now I think we can bring in our guest, Mrs. Valina. Mrs. Valina Agbabian. And there she is. Valina, how are you? Hold on, her audio is still connecting. Our guest, Mrs. Mrs. Valina Agbabian.
Hello.
Hi, Valina. How are you?
Yes, Valina. How are you?
I'm great.
I might need to mute our guest.
Valina, you should turn off the Facebook app that is running right now. So that's the feedback is coming from there.
Perfect. Not yet. Valina, I might need to mute our guest.
Okay, there we go.
No problem. You guys, I will introduce Valina while she's getting that set up. Valina Agbabian is the Northern California District Chair for the Armenian Assembly of America. You know, there's two main advocacy organizations in the U.S., primarily focused on Armenian advocacy issues and favorable legislation for Armenian issues in the U.S. Congress and the State Department, and that's the Armenian Assembly of America and the Armenian National Committee. We just touched on a new program from the ANCA. We're going to now spend a little bit more time getting into detail about a really, really awesome conference that the Armenian Assembly of America is launching next week. And so we wanted to bring in Valina to talk about that. Valina, how are you tonight? Thanks for joining us late night here on Arach Media.
Thank you for having me. I hope that my audio issues are resolved. Am I clear now?
Good.
Yep.
Yes. Don't worry, we all have the audio issues. This whole year has been a vertical growth curve in terms of learning. So
at least you know that I was watching, right?
Absolutely. Thank you for watching. Actually, you guys, I do want to thank Valina on air for her support and encouragement. She has sent messages and emails and just thanking us for what we're doing, Greg, Rich, and really commending us for the growth of Arach Media and for our communication. So Valina, thank you so much for your support in that regard. And just introduce you, Valina, to Rich. Rich is in Sacramento. I know you've seen him before on the show. You've seen him on our town halls. But just to formally introduce you guys, Rich is in Sac. We've been friends for quite a while and connected with him from an advocacy standpoint in Sacramento. And so Rich, meet Valina. Valina, meet Rich. And Valina, you know Greg.
Absolutely. Great to see you. Valina, let's dive into what is the major the item from the Armenian Assembly. We're all friends of the Assembly. What is this conference? How can we support? How can we attend? How can we contribute? Let us have it.
So, as you know, the Armenian Assembly of America, it's the largest Washington, D.C. based advocacy group. We advocate for Armenian issues and try to get our voices heard on the Hill. And every year there's a conference. People fly in from all over the country, and a couple of days worth of conference materials. We do panels to get a lot of information. And then after that, we all have meetings on the Hill with our elected officials, from all over the country. And so we go out there, we have these meetings, we get FaceTime, we get our voices heard, we have our issues raised, and the representatives see that, yes, indeed, we do care, we do exist out there, and we're passionate enough to fly to DC and do this. So it's important. Of course, now with the pandemic, we can't go to DC. But the beauty is that now, as a result, we can have a virtual conference, and it allows for more people to participate without having to travel, because it is very prohibitive in the middle of the week to take time out, and not everyone can do that, time constraints and whatnot. So now we have the virtual conference next week. Monday, Tuesday, there will be 2 panels each day.
Yeah, we're going to.
And
Yeah.
David, you're going to share the schedule. Okay.
Right.
You can register for those panels. These are, just looking at the topics are very timely and important. And I don't know if Stephanie is still on, but here we are, preserving Armenian culture and heritage. It ties in with her movie, right? So these themes, these are things that you guys have been talking about for months now. It's important for us to get the most current information from high-ranking officials from across the spectrum. Now, after participating, you don't have to participate in all of them, but if you participate in at least one of the panels, then you can also attend the virtual meetings with your elected officials. You register for that separately. And then that way you can participate in Zoom meetings with your elected official from wherever they are, whether it be in California, in Montana, in South Carolina, it doesn't matter. That's the beauty of it. And this is very, very important. We always say, oh, why does no one care? Or why don't we do this? Or why don't we do that? We, the collective we, the Armenian community, needs to have their voices heard on Capitol Hill, to have our issues advocated for, and to have our causes and our requests answered. We don't recognize the power we have as Armenian Americans. We're reaching out to our elected officials, and they work for us. So if we tell them what we want, then they will do it. But we have to do it on an ongoing basis. We have to be systematic about it. We have to be firm about it. We have to be professional about it. And we have to take the time to do it. If we don't speak for ourselves, no one else will. There will be a vacuum, and their other voices will fill in. So it's important that we do it. There may be cynics out there say, oh, we're such a small community, why would they care? They care. If you're loud enough, if you are passionate enough, they will care. Yeah. Because, everybody advocates for their cause, whether it be farmers in the Midwest, or environmental groups, whoever. Everyone has an equal right to advocate for their cause. And for us, our issues are Armenian issues. Coming on the heels of the bipartisan letter that was sent to the Biden administration, it's important to follow that up so that it's not just a one-off thing. Okay, so we had Congressman Pallone spearhead this letter, and it went to Secretary of State Blinken and the administration. So now we have to follow up. We have to say, okay, it's not just one letter. Now, here are the things that were highlighted in that letter, and here are requests, and these are the things that are important to us. And it's so important that we're having this conference, we're having this meeting with you. It takes time to schedule these meetings, and to have that FaceTime is important. It is very important to establish these relationships. I've been going to these conferences for a number of years now. David has been there. Of course, it was a lot of fun in DC, going from one building to the next and all of that. But now we can shorten that time, and have the same impact by continuing to participate. So please register, not just for our friends here in California. If you have friends and family in other parts of the country, it's important to have those voices heard so that it isn't such a California heavy voice. It's critical that the representatives know that we're everywhere, and we are everywhere.
Yes.
We just have to be louder.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would actually like to piggyback on something that you mentioned about getting in front of these, our elected officials. First of all, we do, as the diaspora, enjoy a particular privilege in being able to interact directly with these elected officials, and we need to use that more often. We need to use that with a lot more, for lack of a better way of putting it, intelligence. And more strategy. And I think that, if we can't out fundraise the Turks or the Azeris, we can out organize and we can out execute. And I think the other thing I would say is that if attention is the new currency in the world, we can harness that and get in front of them and get their attention in order to change the laws and the way budgets are created and help our community the best way we can.
So
I'm so glad that you mentioned budgets, because one of the things that we're asking for is aid to Armenia.
Right.
And as much fundraising as we can do in the diaspora and the Armenian community, by a slight swipe of a pen, we can get millions of dollars in assistance, humanitarian assistance to Armenia.
Absolutely.
And those things are difficult to argue against because it's humanitarian aid. So we need to make sure that the administration understands that this is a critical issue for us. And the more people we have participating in these types of dialogues, the more we can emphasize that. Of course, we're also going to bring up the issues of the POWs,
Right.
and thank the representatives for their support. And so these are the kinds of dialogue you want to have, you want to encourage, and building on it, and then next year and next year. So you have this ongoing relationship. So when something does happen, you can pick up that phone and make that call. And there's someone at the other end who already knows you. It isn't who are you and why are you calling me? So we need to have this kind of conferences and opportunities and participation from the community.
Right.
Absolutely. And it's more accessible than ever now with this online format. Valina, thank you so much for just really beautifully outlining what it is and why it's important. And we're sharing the link for how to register. The panels are really, really well done. I think they're phenomenal. I've already registered. I encourage everybody to register. This is free. This is a free conference. Like you said, you and I have been able to attend the National Advocacy Conference a number of times. It's a really, really, really amazing experience. There's a social and networking aspect to it. We're still going to be able to have the presentations that we can be a part of. I think we'll still be able to have some kind of a networking aspect, but you don't have to go to DC. You don't have to travel to DC. And I think the Armenian Assembly, from what I know, from what I could tell, is a groundbreaker in this regard, that we have this whole conference online, followed by the ability to meet with your representative online as well. I haven't seen other advocacy organizations doing this at this scale, at this level. So I think it's really amazing. Yeah.
Yes. So there will be appropriations coming up. This is a new administration with new representatives. So with some members of Congress, they're just being introduced to what an Armenian is. Some are very intimately aware of who we are and what we represent and what we want. Others, they couldn't point at Armenia on a map. They don't even know what an Armenian is. They probably don't even know that part of the world very well. So it's an education process. So if we don't get there first, someone else will. And then it becomes so much harder to change the narrative, because if we don't speak our truth, someone else will speak their version of the truth.
Right.
And we know they are. The Azeris and the Turks are. They have been, right? And they're so well funded. And like to your point, Valina, also, it could be the staffer that's in the meeting, and maybe the staffer doesn't even know about this, or maybe the staffer missed the issue of the letter that was being passed around the floor, the House floor, to be signed for supporters of Congress. So yes, it's so important for us to be there to make our.
I also think that we just need to make the case, not to dive too far into the mechanics, but just to, we have to make the case of why it's important to support Armenia, because Armenians have been supporting and developing and creating this country that we're living in right now for almost as long as this country has been here. There have been Armenians that have been cultivating the land and providing food for most of America for generations. We've provided so many tremendous, products, and the list goes on for our, what we've contributed to America. So for those people who maybe wonder, well, why should, the American government care about the Armenians? Well, that's because Armenians have cared about America,
Exactly.
Anyway, my 2 cents.
Yeah.
I will put one more plug in for the Armenian Assembly, because we are a bipartisan organization. It doesn't matter Democrat, Republican.
At all.
And oftentimes a lot of representatives look for opportunities to participate in things that are bipartisan, so that they can say, yes, I reach across the aisle and I work with my colleagues on the other end of the spectrum on a number of issues. So providing opportunities for them to be able to do that is also a good thing. Additionally, because the Assembly does not get involved with the politics in Armenia proper, so it gives us the opportunity to just speak as Americans. So as you're not getting involved politically there, you're not speaking on behalf, you don't become a mouthpiece for another country. You're just speaking as an American. That's it.
Right.
Very, very well said. Very important. Thank you for putting this on. Again, let's kind of bring it home for everybody. We'll be sharing it, as much as we can. So it's next week, right? Starting on Monday. Starting on Monday, you have the ability to register. And how can somebody register? I mean, we want to make sure everybody registers early, but you can register on Sunday as well if you.
Yes, ideally you will register right after this meeting.
Yes.
Or when you watch this, when you watch over exactly.
Sometime in the next day or so. The congressional meetings, when you do register to meet with your representative, it will say that it is TBD, to be determined, because those meetings are very specific based on the availability of the representative. And because there's so many representatives and people from all over the country participating, we couldn't possibly put down the schedule for each individual meeting. But you will be sent the material, and you won't be alone in the meetings. Every meeting will have an experienced person there with you to sort of help guide the meeting. And so it won't be, you won't be put on the spot. It's a great way to participate. It's an incredible learning opportunity with minimal risk.
Amazing.
Well said.
I would love a minute with my representative, Jerry McNerney of the East Bay.
Hey, he signed the letter. He signed the letter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind. I could be in a room with him by myself. Let's go for it.
Do it. Thank you so much for joining us late, and for all of the information. You broke it down so well, and the links will be in the feed for everyone to register.
Already up there.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Rich.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, David. Thank you so much for reaching out. And I don't know how you guys connected, but I'm really grateful. I hope that we can get a lot of people to sign up and participate for a variety of reasons. And again, Valina, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Good night.
All right.
Hi, Valina. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, guys.
All right.
But,
Well,
so
let's see.
that-
We've covered a lot of ground tonight. We had a terrific interview with a fantastic filmmaker who is a former Bay Area resident and now is a Philly resident. We've had a little bit of news, and we've just spoken about some political advocacy. So this is it's been a pretty big day.
It has. It has.
And you know,
Okay.
everybody, thank you. Yeah, thank you for producing an amazing show. Everyone that's watching, thank you for watching. The folks that have donated, thank you for donating, because this is, you know, as a byproduct of what we do in Arach Media, is we constantly fundraise, and I am so humbled to see more and more people donate. As Stephanie was talking about how hard it was to fundraise during the centennial.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but go there in my head, going like, hey man, we can do both things at the same time. We can raise money for Artsakh, and we can still, you know, call KQED and be like, hey man, thanks for showcasing these Armenian documentaries. Here's, you know, $10, $15, $20 or whatever you can afford. You know what I mean? Like, we can do all that, and I highly encourage everybody does.
Well
Love
said.
you. I'm out.
Yeah. And thanks to all of our donors, we have raised $6,475 and counting for a number of very worthy organizations, nonprofits supporting Armenian Artsakh. So including Armenian Wounded Heroes Fund this evening, which we have raised $2,630 and counting as of tonight for our wounded soldiers in Artsakh and Armenia. So
the last thing I would add is if you're going to look at one link tonight on this entire thread, it should be the Arach Media link tree, because that will have links to everything on there.
It does.
We break them out individually so that on this feed, so that you can go to the ones that you've seen tonight. But all the main bread and butter links that we typically go to are going to be housed in this link tree, and which will be updated periodically. David does a fantastic job of making
and thank you for pointing that out, Rich, because it already has the Armenian Assembly Conference up there. So yes, if you want that one link, click it and then click ahead to register for the virtual advocacy conference next week. So.
Okay, and the last thing that I'm going to say, period, besides goodbye, is for the rest of this month, we will be on Thursday, 9 p.m. We're going to try and keep it to an hour and a quarter top. And so we'll be going live at 9 p.m. We've got some other guests that we're working on right now, so stay tuned for some updated information. One other thing I was going to say, but I think that's it.
See you on Thursday.
Okay, see you on Thursday, everybody. Take care, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for watching.
Tell other people about it. Thank you.